Hey guys, welcome to ITS. What's going on right now is Florence is bearing down on the East Coast, and this is also National Preparedness Month, so I wanted to make a quick video kind of highlighting some things that would make for good reminders at this point in time if you're not already dealing with the evacuation that's taking place on the East Coast for the hurricane. So thankfully it's already been downgraded to a Category 2, but obviously that's still potential flooding and damage and everything still goes along with that, so nobody's out of the woods yet. But I wanted to take a look at some things from an aspect of a single bag. So if you remember, if you've been reading ITS, we had a contributor write about some flooding that occurred in his area. He didn't live in an area that was prone to flooding. He and his family were sleeping at night, and all of a sudden the water came, and it came quick. They had to be evacuated by emergency response personnel, and they were told they could only take one bag per person. So that's real life. I mean, when the Houston stuff happened and all that flooding happened down there, they were told the same thing. Some people couldn't even take a bag. So it's really good to start thinking about your life in terms of one bag. So I know that's kind of hard to wrap your head around, and I still have a problem with that too, but you know, just sit down over dinner one night and just say, hey, if we had to take one bag, not only per person, but maybe even between us all, what would we put in that? So just starting that dialogue and talking about what you would have could be very beneficial later, and you could start assembling it based on that if you don't have anything like that already. These are some things that I kind of have put together, and I'm kind of always in the middle of some kind of organization and some type of what would I take, you know, what does it look like, what would I grab kind of thing. So I'm always sorting through that stuff, and I wanted to highlight kind of three things in this video. One is kind of a large backpack size. I guess I hesitate to call it a survival kit, but yes, you could survive out of this for multiple days for a family. That's kind of how I built this. This is the bag that lives at home that I would grab in an emergency situation and throw into a vehicle if I had to leave in case of something like that. So I think that you're more likely to have to bug in than bug out, so to speak. We've talked about that before. However, I do always still prepare for that scenario because of things like flooding. Like flooding is a big deal. Even where we live in Texas, even my street, I'm kind of elevated. I'm not as worried about it, but we still have flood insurance. I mean, we talked about that in the last gear tasting. This is National Preparedness Month. We talked about, you know, making sure you have flood insurance. This is a great time to check everything. Well, it's also hurricane season and things are happening. So just because you don't live on the coast doesn't mean you can't have a weather event that pushes inland from a hurricane on the coast. So great time to review everything. I also want to talk about the CERT bag that I got when I took the CERT class years ago in Fort Worth. I wanted to kind of poke through that and kind of talk about some of the differences. And then I also want to talk about canine kits. This is the one that I have for my dog, and I want to just kind of show you what's in there too, because canines are something that most people don't really think about. I know I've talked before about food and stuff with that, but I'll get into that too. So just really briefly, I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about this particular bag that I keep because we've gone over this in dramatic detail. I think I've taken everything out of this on a past episode, so we will link to that video. Is that where you're going to put it, Rob? Right there? It's going to be right there. All right. So, but I will just kind of briefly open it. This is a Gr2 backpack from Goruck. You know, I've got meals. I've got everything to cook with. I mean, there's just a ton of stuff in here. It's, you know, it's the basic categories: food, shelter, water, fire starting, etc., medical. Everything is in here that you might need from those categories. So, and again, I tried to gear this in a way that it could support multiple people, not just me. So, and I know the weight of this bag. I don't remember it offhand, but I know that it's ruckable. So that's another thing that you really want to take into account when you're putting together something like this, is you might need to make sure that you can carry that weight and you're used to carrying that weight. Even throwing a pair of boots or something with socks hanging off your bag or something that you could, you know, take with you if you just had to leave really quickly and you didn't even have time to put on boots. You know, things like that are things to start getting your gears turning about. So then the CERT stuff. So CERT stands for Community Emergency Response Team, and most cities now are running CERT classes, so you can basically take a CERT certification for free. It's usually a multi-week class, meets probably like once a week for 8 weeks or something like that. It also really kind of gives you a good perspective of your city's emergency management plan or emergency response plan too, because the way this works is that you are kind of a standby readiness team with the training you have and the gear they give you for free, which I'll go into, to come assist in triage situations or anything that they might need help with where their emergency response in your particular city gets taxed and overwhelmed and they need help. They'll call in search. So more than likely you're never going to get called up, but you know, hey, it could happen. So I've been back and forth with this contents of this bag. I had, grabbed an old backpack, this old Blackhawk bag of mine, and I was starting, I haven't touched this thing in probably a year, but I was starting to kind of port things over to a non-made in China, falling apart backpack. Bless their hearts, this is what they gave us. This was all free. I'm not discounting that. I mean, they're dealing with giving thousands of these away, so I get it. But I wanted something that I could grab for search situations, so that's kind of what I've been working towards. They give you this fancy hard hat here. Mine's got the City of Fort Worth search stuff on it. Actually, it's just plain old search. That's their logo. I have got a non-working D-cell flashlight, which I wouldn't take with me anyway. That's kind of something I was going to swap out. Excuse me. Also some just kind of run-of-the-mill medical stuff, non-sterile gauze, gauze pads, triangle bandage, Band-Aids that are going to fall off, not our boo-boo kit. So I would replace it with that. Got some duct tape that has seen better days. Problem with duct tape in any configuration you carry it in, it's susceptible to heat, so it's something you got to take caution about or keep in mind. Some just regular work gloves, protective eyewear, just in case you're around Bunsen burners, apparently. I added this little N95 mask, which is a little better than the little floppy one they had in here, but I've been starting to kind of port some stuff over. They did give you some trauma shears. I don't even know what kind of rubber gloves these are, but these aren't nitrile gloves. A couple of chem lights, some marking crayons. So that's something they teach you too with the triage stuff is, learning how to mark doors. So if you and your CERT team are tasked with running through a building to find out, are there any injuries in there? Are there any survivors? That kind of thing. It teaches you some marking signals that you would use these for. Little cheap whistle to signal with, a very, very cheap multi-tool, but hey, it's better than nothing. And then emergency blanket, a little vest to make sure everybody sees you, and it does have the CERT logo on it. I was just making sure of that. So this is something I added a while back. This is a book that tells you all the signs for transporting hazardous goods. So if you've ever seen the trucks driving down the street and they have those little signs on them like this, and you've ever wondered what all that stuff means, this book will tell you that. So it's kind of a good thing to keep if you can. They publish these every 3 years, so even though this is 2012, I don't even know when the last one came out. There might be the newest one, I'm not really sure. But anyway, it'll tell you stuff like that and also talk about, dangerous chemicals. So you can kind of identify things with this book, before you go messing with them. So that's kind of why I carry it. And this is the absolute best thing to come out of the CERT class that I took. So I really love this tool. It's lightweight. It's got a gas shutoff. So this is a little area here you can stick on one of those gas deals and actually turn it off. And then this is a water shutoff tool. So you can put this into the street side where the water comes into your house, and you can shut off that valve to shut off the water at your house. So with this one tool, it's not only great for a little crash axe or something to break through a window, but it's also great to turn off water and gas, which is huge in an emergency situation. So anyway, like I said, this isn't really kind of a, I've only got one bag to take kit, but this is just another version of something that you can have ready. Like I said, I want this to be something that I'm ready to go for search stuff with. However, I do see some flaws in it, and we will hit this again. I've probably talked about CERT before on videos, but I will come back to this because I do think kind of this organization and equipment is important in some regards. Not necessarily like if a flood comes, but it's still good stuff. And then just really quick, The Canine Pack that I have, our Doberman hates wearing it. She can't stand it, but you know, I have worked with her with this on, so she is kind of used to it. Every couple of months I'll probably put it on her and take her for a walk or something like that, even though I don't normally take this. It is a little bit heavy for her to carry all the time. However, she is quite used to it now. I've got food and water bowls, a Kong, tennis ball, a muzzle just in case, a bladder that I can fill with water. So we got the food and water thing covered. I usually have a Ziploc bag full of food in here as well. But as I mentioned, what I do is I rotate out her food every month. So I get a new bag, I put the old bag into the dog food container, and I've always have a full bag of food ready to go if I have to take it with me. Then I've also got our Canine Trauma Kit in here, one of our Gizmo light bags. I won't go into that necessarily, but that's something you can check out. We'll link to that in the episode intel or show notes. And then I've got a little, basically like a skin stapler that's great for canine stuff. It can also be used on humans. You have to carry the stapler and the removal tool too. A couple of chem lights, and then on the top there's a carabiner and also this little signaling thing. So if I need to, I can kind of see where she's at night, which you would really not, you might not think about that, but it's actually a really good thing to have. Just if your dog gets separated with you, there's some kind of visual indication of where they are. So I know I'm kind of been all over the place with different stuff, but really the gist of this was to remind you guys to think about the one bag thing. So think about what you would put in there, whether that's important documents, whether that's food, whether that's necessities, medications, that type of thing, things that wouldn't be readily available and you just couldn't live without. Really kind of think about it in those regards. It's a crappy thing to have to think about it, but it really could save your life one of these days.